Well, hello again. Here we are exploring who you and I are as consciousness and implications of that for our lives and for being happier, healthier, and more content in our lives. Anyway, last week I spoke about Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian problem-solving method and in some ways is a healing method. And as Joe Vitale, who I've done some more research this week and kind of went back because I had first heard about this when I was in the Casa del Dominacio, the healing center of St. Ignatius of Loyola in Brazil. And it was first introduced to me then. And I had made a mistake in thinking that when Dr. Hew Len, whose name is a longer name, was working with the unit at the Hawaiian hospital of the mentally ill, the criminally insane, the Hannibal Lecter types, the rapists, the murderers, that it was so dangerous that people, and including himself, when he went into the unit, would have to walk against the wall with their back against the wall to stay away from the bars where they were housed, in the prison-like setting they were in. So what I thought was I understood that he just looked at the charts of the patients, never sat with them and had a therapy session, even though he's a psychologist. He would look at the charts and say, "I'm sorry and I love you." Now, what I had heard at Brazil was the four statements that you would make in a situation that you wanted to heal. You would say, "I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you." Now, we'll break that down a little bit. So he wasn't saying, "I'm sorry and I love you" to the criminally insane. He was really tapping into that, what we've been talking about in terms of quantum physics and in terms of the ancient teachings, that there's a divine intelligence, or just a fundamental intelligence, like I was saying from John Hagelin, that the tighter that physics tries to grasp the building blocks, the fundamental nature of reality and life, the more that what they find as they got down to the subatomic level, the nuclear level, and so forth, that Max Planck talked about, the space in which the atoms are existing, the vastness of the space, the 99.9% emptiness in all matter. When we get down to that level, life's and the universe, reality slips through your fingers, that it's really a non-material, dynamic, self-aware intelligence, that pure consciousness that you and I are. Now, stay with me for a second and consider this. As you're looking at me on the screen and looking around the room and hearing whatever, that the fundamental ground of who you are and what all this is, the mind, the body, the world that's appearing in you and in me as I am that witnessing consciousness, that which is seeing me on the screen and hearing my words cannot be seen or heard. Think about that. That which is saying, "I see this, I hear that," itself is the fundamental ground of reality. It can't be seen, heard, touched, tasted, smelled. It's not an object. You're a subject. And you and I, there's really, as John Hagelin was saying in one of his interviews, the physicist, he said, there's really only one consciousness in the room. We're all part of that one consciousness, that one divine, if you will, if you want to use the word divine, vast intelligence. Now, some people listening may be atheistic, and that really means not a theist. They don't like the word God. They shun that word. And ironically, Buddhism is one of the most it's preserved its integrity as a uh, spiritual tradition, and has kept its vibration at one of the highest levels, and yet it's atheistic. There's not a personalized God, and the word God has been so misunderstood and misused. It's not, the bearded man in the sky, but there is something that we realize is much beyond our little mind. Like it's a candle versus the sun. It's that which is beating your heart, growing your fingernails, growing your hair. All that intelligence is taking place in DNA. It's like DNA contains volumes, one strand, volumes, like vast libraries of information. And so as we learn to kind of realize that we can only do so much with our conscious mind, and it's a magnifying glass for that vast consciousness that we are. So if we begin to realize that, we live our lives really kind of recognizing and appreciating that deeper, vaster intelligence. Call it God for those that are comfortable with that. So in my own life, the thing that has been driving me in my seeking is what was said to me years ago. I was talking to a shaman, and she said to me, a shaman in Maine, and she said to me, I'm getting something about your eyes, about your glaucoma. I have to leave the room for a minute. I'll be back. So she left the room. When she came back, she said, did you get anything? Did you have anything pop in your mind while I was away? I said, yeah. When I can see with total love and no fear, my eyes will become clear. So, what's interesting is that this whole thing of this whole secret Hawaiian method for wealth, health, peace, and much more, which is one of the subtitles for Joe Vitale's book. I'll give you a link to that, Zero Limits. And he's got another one out called At Zero. And so what Hew Len, Dr. Hew Len, was doing with the criminally insane was he was saying to this divine intelligence, as he would look at the charts and something negative in himself, and he wouldn't identify it necessarily, he just would know that there's something in him that was causing what was appearing in him as this consciousness, as this witnessing presence that we're talking about. So his whole emphasis was you and I as consciousness, I'm using consciousness, he didn't use that word, but we'll use it and weave it in, that you and I are responsible for whatever is appearing in our consciousness, our awareness at any particular moment. So if we're hearing news of a tsunami in Indonesia, when Hew Len would hear this, say this information, or when he was looking at the charts of the criminally insane, he would say, I love you to that divine intelligence, to God for him. And then I'm sorry meant I'm sorry for that which is in me, that negative thought or feeling, that negative information, those painful memories, whatever they are, even if I'm not conscious of them, that is causing or creating or attracting this information into my current experience. I'm sorry for that which is causing this negative outcome, the tsunami, or the person to be a rapist or a murderer. And that's the I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And that would mean erase these negative emotions within me, clear them, clean me of these, and then thank you. And basically to thank you is thank you for cleaning these out of me and returning me to my original, the paradise, I would say, of my original nature, of my true self, the light, the pure light of consciousness, that within which there's this vast intelligence that creates all this. Now, this reminds me of something that Eckhart Tolle had said, that over thousands of years, consciousness, this fundamental reality that you and I are, that's seeing and hearing, but we can't see or hear, but we see through and hear through. Over thousands of years, this consciousness has taken on the disguise of physical form to where the forms have become so complex, from zebras and ants and so forth to all that we see and hear in the world, and touch and taste and smell, and our bodies and our minds, that it became lost. It seemed to have gotten lost in its creations, in the forms that it created. And in present day humans, Eckhart Tolle said, consciousness is completely identified with its disguise as this physical and psychological form. And when you're knowing yourself only as a form, unconsciously or maybe even consciously at times, you can live in constant fear of the annihilation of this physical and this psychological form. So that when the pressure becomes too great, as it did for Eckhart Tolle one night, then consciousness is forced to disidentify from its forms, and to awaken to its own formless, timeless identity as the ever-present I am, consciousness in its pure state prior to identifying with forms, whether it's psychological or physical, whether it's the body, the mind, or the body. Okay, so the process with Dr. Hew Len was to speak to this intelligence and say, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. So in your own life, you can begin to try those 4 statements. So you're driving in traffic, the guy cuts you off in traffic, and you're angry, you get road rage, you stop, still incorporate some of what we talked about, take a breath, cool, calm, and then say, I love you to this intelligence, if you're inclined to say God, or to something that's more vast than your conscious mind, if you're more of an atheistic bent. I love you, and I'm sorry for whatever was in me that attracted that person cutting me off. So you're taking full responsibility, which the benefit of that it's not a guilt trip. The benefit of that is that if I take full responsibility for it, it means I can take full responsibility for clearing it. I can have the power to do something about it if it's all in me. So remember, as the light of consciousness, I am that stable, enduring, unchanging light of consciousness in which all these seeming things are appearing and disappearing. People, places, things, animals, plants. And so in this next step, we're saying that whatever has appeared in my experience, I am responsible for it at some level. Not to get a guilt trip, but to get power from that, to be able to make an appeal to love itself. God is love, and he that liveth in love liveth in God, and God in him. That's the St. John quote. That you make an appeal to that, and then as you're even using the words from a self-talk standpoint, they have a different feeling to it. So just notice the word I love you and how that feels in your body versus I hate you, or I hate you for cutting me off. I love you, and I'm sorry for this negative reaction I'm having and what it's caused, how it's caused this person to cut me off and attracted that into me. And please forgive me for that reaction and clear me out of that reaction, to remove that from me, to cleanse it. And thank you for doing that and returning me to my own pure state of consciousness, to that purity. And so the book is called Zero Limits, and that means you return to zero. You return to where you're cleared out of all the painful memories. And again, this is not a one-shot deal. It's a constant cleaning process. This is what he talks about. So I'll leave it up to you to investigate it further, but I just wanted to correct what I had said last week and try to tie it in, that if we realize that you could say to yourself, try it on for right now, I am that in which all this is appearing. In the 3 areas again, mind, which includes thoughts and feelings, inner objects, body, which includes the inner objects of sensations and aches and pains and pleasures, and the world, which includes sights, sounds, things you touch, taste, and smell, that I am that in which all this appears, and take a breath in, I am that in which all this appears, and I am that which is appearing as all this. Okay? So the two things are true. I am that in which all this is appearing, and I am that light of consciousness which is appearing in and as all this, the computer, the desk, the sofa, the trees, the plants. Try that on. I am that in which all this appears, and I am that which is appearing in and as all this. That being the case, I then can take responsibility for whatever appears in my experience. And then I can make this appeal to this higher power to cleanse me of that which is contracted in me, anger, fear, sadness, depression, like the chart back here, and returning it like the chart shows, to love, symbolized by the red heart. Okay, so there's still the similar process. But there's, if the problem that my friend is having of nightmares, then I would say, or a patient having with his boss, I would say, I love you to this divine intelligence, and I'm sorry for whatever is in me, if I'm not sure I could identify exactly what it is, that is causing my friend to have his nightmares or my patient to have this problem with the boss. And then please forgive me for having this that's causing these problems, the nightmares for my friend and the problems with the boss, with my patient, and cleanse me of that which is in me that's doing that. And thank you, which implies thank you for cleansing me and returning me to the paradise of my pure state of being. And then you get a glimpse of that being just the light itself, the light of consciousness, brilliant and bright. So you're leaving the cave of darkness and stepping into the bright light of the sun, forever begone that darkness. But again, things come up, so you're clearing and you're cleaning. So that you're not trying, but you're working on cleansing. And this may be, you can cleanse a room with this process. You can talk to the room. You can talk to your car. And I'll leave you this one story. When I first was attuned to Reiki, a woman from Texas was seeing me in Connecticut, and she was going through a divorce, and that's what we were focused on. But at the end of the session, she, let me back up. So at the beginning of the session, she shifted off of her divorce and was all uptight about her car with 250,000 miles that she'd come from Texas, and it had to go back and forth a few times. The mileage had accumulated in the car. She took it into the mechanic, and it had a cracked head. It was overheating. And he said, there's nothing we can do. You're going to have to get a new car. So she drove it anyway, making sure she had extra water to keep putting in for the heating. She got to my office, and she was upset about it. I said, let's talk about your car. Let's talk about your divorce first. We'll get to your car at the end of the session. So at the end of the session, I went out. She raised the hood. I put my hands while she sat inside her car, over the engine. And I said some things within myself. I sent Reiki energy. May you be healed of your problem to whatever degree you can be, this cracked engine block. And you two, I said, have been together for a while. You have an appreciation of each other. You've had a good relationship. May your relationship continue as long as possible. I know there's affection between the two of you. You know, she's really appreciated you, and you've appreciated her for taking good care of you. So may you receive the healing you need. So she shut the hood. She drove off. She came back next Friday for her session, and she said, you know, after you did whatever you did, my car was fine. It didn't overheat for the whole week. I drove it on a lot on Thursday, parked it, and bought my new car. And that's sort of like what a shaman does. He sees that consciousness in everything. So in the stillness, we can feel our own formless and timeless reality as the unseen life and consciousness activating this physical form. This is a derivative of what Eckhart has said. I just add the word consciousness. And you can then begin to see and feel that consciousness deep within you, and that life within you is in every other creature and every other person. But it's also, you can think of it as in any objects, since there's only one reality from which everything is appearing. So even tables, desks, and chairs, and that's another thing. You can even speak to them, but that's for another time, as I did to this car, as seemingly metal and bolts and seemingly inanimate. But it worked. So you can conduct your own experiments with this. As you simply remember, I am that in which all that I'm experiencing is appearing, and I am that from which all that I experience is deriving its seemingly independent existence. That is, that you seem to be independent from me. The pieces of the puzzle you may be working on are independent of you. The desk is independent of you, but it's apparently independent because all is existing in consciousness. And since all is existing in consciousness, you can have some impact on that by appealing to that divine consciousness, which you are and I am. We all are at another level beyond our body minds. A lot to think about, but it's magical, and we'll come back to more of this in weeks to come. Have a great week, and I'll see you then.